What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Blues Nation, and we got a big one today because we're gonna just go ahead, wash our hands collectively of that game in Paris, which, by the way, we didn't get to hash that out together. What a weird game, because majority of it I was thinking, man, this is gonna be only positive. Honestly, even if we lose 3-2, because we have a goal disallowed off of, Pedro being 1 foot off sides. We performed amazingly. We had better XG than PSG for, through the first 70 plus minutes. And then the mistake, in my opinion, of playing Philip Jorgensen really reared its head, right? With the risky nature of how he plays, which apparently Rosignor likes, demonstrating to be a problem, right? PSG couldn't be given that goal in any easier of a fashion. Yeah, it was a good finish, but it was totally gifted to them. And then the game just fell apart moving on from there. I think the players were frustrated, right? He almost gave away another goal if it weren't for PSG being offsides in a similar fashion. But nonetheless, there's still a lot to be worked for in the season. There's still technically Champions League to fight for, even though we have a heck of a lot of work to be done at Stamford Bridge. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. This Saturday, we have the Magpies coming, and we're playing against Newcastle Saturday at, I believe it's 5:30 in England and around lunchtime or so here in Eastern America. So what I want to talk about first off, before we jump into some team news and whatnot, just want to hit on the fact that Newcastle, I think, is having one of the most under the radar disappointing seasons in the Premier League this year. Just like flash back a couple years ago, remember who Newcastle was revving up to be. They got bought by this giant, I don't remember if it was like a composite group or if it was a singular personal owner. I don't really remember, but I do remember that we're supposed to have this crazy money, right? Similar to like when Man City got bought, and it was gonna be like, this is gonna be the next City, the team that gets bought by a bunch of money, gets built up into this Galactico, which they still could. But that's what I'm saying. This year should be viewed as really a major disappointment for them, because we're here as Chelsea, right, viewing this year as potentially a disappointment. And we're sitting in 5th, competing for the top 4 places. And I think there's still a very good chance we finish there. Newcastle, I'll pop up a little screen clip here. Newcastle is floundering in 12th right now. I believe they have more losses than they do wins, if I'm not mistaken there. They're extremely inconsistent. And it's just a weird year for them, right? They brought in Voltamata as this really imposing striker who's both tall and lanky, but also really physically gifted, fairly technical and impressive player. And now they have him kind of playing as a midfielder, and I don't really know what they're doing, right? They lost their captain, Bruno Guimaraes, for I think the next month or so still. So they have their own problems. They're in a weird spot, much worse of a spot than our Chelsea, even though sometimes just in our little fishbowl it can feel like we're in the most topsy-turvy time of any club. It's not at all the case. Just reminding us there are other teams with even more worrying stories going on right now. So without going any further, let's start to hop into some team news, a little bit of updates for you guys based off injuries, who we can expect to be at least a part of the squad moving into this match against Newcastle. All right, so right here, I'm on the standard UK, and I just want to look at a little bit of the Chelsea versus Newcastle team news. So clarifying a couple of these names, I don't want to totally get your attention without giving the truth. It's likely and or they are moving forward. It's not necessarily these names are getting given because they're for sure going to play. So let me just read here, and it says, Rosignor was handed a triple boost to his squad ahead of the trip to Paris. So this is before even the PSG game, with Esteval, Levi Colwill, and Jamie Gittins all returning to training from their respective injuries. So we know Steve-O was real close, but seeing Levi Colwill's name in there, you guys probably saw some pictures of him actually back in training with the boys. The good news is he is getting closer. It does look like he might be able to feature for us sooner rather than later. I don't think it's going to be, absolutely it's not going to be this weekend. That's not what this article is saying either. It actually says down here, if you see, Colwill was in modified training. So he's going to probably have a long process, several weeks, I'd assume, at least, and then maybe a couple training matches even, and then probably cameos. But given that it's mid-March right now, maybe by the second week of April, or even the start of April, I could foresee him coming back in a real capacity, which I am very excited about. We need to remember that we're navigating this entire season without arguably our biggest upside defensive player, apart from Reece James. So a massive piece of our team, right? A future captain, in my opinion, in Levi Colwill. So he's making positive strides. He's actually in training, which is hugely exciting. Jamie Gittens, I know a lot of people are not thrilled about the player that he's turned out to be, but I remind you, I saw this post I thought was really interesting. A lot of these players that we see go elsewhere and succeed, and the post, I wish I'd saved it so I could remember the person giving them credit, but basically it was referencing Lewis Hall, and a lot of people are like, oh, how could we have let him go? We let him go, and it took him months and months and months and months of regular football with Newcastle to be the player that he is today. That's what this post was saying. Similarly, that could be the case with Jamie Gittens and Liam Delap. These guys who, they're young, right? They're just barely 20, basically, and we're expecting them to be finished products already. They need time, especially when they're coming to a new league like Jamie Gittens is. I still think he has so much raw potential if we give him the time to produce that. So that's also exciting that he's coming back to training. Obviously, Stevau, we've missed. What an exciting player he is. So that's some good news, right? And then for Newcastle, I mentioned it earlier, but the bad news is obviously their captain, Bruno, is out. He's going to be out for about another month, which is huge for them. He's probably, I'd say, their best player right now. Anthony Gordon's great as well. And they also will be without Fabian Schär and Emil Kraft. And Lewis Miley actually will also likely be missing. So they have some fairly big names missing from their squad. Whereas apart from the ones that have always been missing, like Colwill, the biggest one being Stevau, all positive news for us, which I'm really encouraged by. So some good positive vibes for us to kind of continue to move forward with as our players are continuing to get more fit instead of regress backwards, which is what felt like was the case the last 5 years with this club, always having new players get injured, and that's not the case, which is really, really exciting. So that's some of the team news for the game on Saturday for Newcastle. I could maybe foresee Stevau being part of the squad, not starting by any means, but part of the squad. I wouldn't expect Colwill or Gittens to be anywhere near the squad, given the more long-term sense of their injury process. But all good news with those guys. So let's go ahead and hop now into building a squad together as we get ready for this match. How can we tear down Newcastle, who's been inconsistent, yet has a high ceiling of ability? So let's go ahead and build a squad together. All right, guys, so you see my starting 11 right here. And we actually start with a very interesting question, which I didn't think was an interesting question until apparently last week or week and a half. Do we start Robert Sanchez or do we start Philip Jorgensen? Apparently for Liam Rosenior, that's a difficult question. For me, it's not at all. Has Robert Sanchez been perfect? By no means. Has he been solid? Absolutely, in my opinion. I think if you look at players and say, I'm going to judge them and I'm going to sit them based off 1, 2, maybe even 3 performances, I think that's a poor way to manage your club. And I'm not trying to indict Liam Rosenior. He's a smart coach. I think he could still absolutely make it here at this football club. But I didn't like his quote where he says, I treat the goalkeeping position like any other position on the field. No, as far as I know, no club does like that. If you are treating your goalkeeper like that, it's a recipe for losing all confidence as a goalkeeper. And that is a position that's solely, I think, based upon confidence. I think while I blame Jorgensen, I also, to an extent, basically think he pulled what Tottenham did with Kinski. This is a guy who's played low importance matches for us the whole year. He's been injured off and on, and he's played limited role, and he hasn't been good in that limited role, in my opinion. And then you throw him in this game against PSG at the Parc des Princes. I think that's madness, if I'm being honest. So anyway, for me, I'm starting Robert Sanchez. He is still my starter until a Mike Penders arrives at the club and proves himself. So Robert Sanchez. Then Reece James on the right slots in, even though I do think Malo Gusto was very, very solid in a lot of ways against PSG. Maybe not perfect, but solid. Reece James was actually more to blame for some stuff than Mallow was in that game. But I'm going to start him at right back. And then this gets a little interesting as well. I have Mamadou Sarr paired with Trev Chalobah because here's the thing. I am not at the point where I am comfortable just starting Wesley Fofana every match just if he's fit. I think the performances need to match the pedigree because I love the guy. He has such raw physical ability. I think he's very poised on the ball, but sometimes I think his positional awareness in the box is not always what I desire for it to be from a center back. So, and Mamadou Sarr he's been great at Strasbourg. He was amazing for, I believe it was Senegal, right? This is actually the wrong flag for him here. I want to see a little bit more of him. And if we're not going to see the Champions League, I think this is where we should see it. So I have him paired with Trev and then Mark on the left. And in the middle, I have Andre Santos coming back into the starting 11. I think he'll start once again for us with Moises, who I think was pretty good against PSG. And then the front kind of four. I got Cole actually in the 10. And then I have Pedro Neto on the right. And I have Alejandro Garnacho on the left with Joao Pedro up top. And guys, if I'm being completely transparent, for some reason I feel like I just didn't even think about putting Enzo Fernandez in this lineup, which is crazy. So what I would actually probably do is, even though I wouldn't be surprised by Garnacho starting this game and maybe Enzo slots in instead of Andre, I still feel like Andre will likely start. And then what you'll probably see is, let's remove Alejandro and let's put in Enzo Fernandez. That we've seen this lately, right? Where he is, at least on the sheet, kind of a left wing, but what really happens is, right, Pedro's up here. Palmer kind of navigates this spot all up in here. He's kind of free to roam all that he wants in front of the box. He doesn't generally go on the left very much, so mainly around here. And then Enzo is this advanced role, really just crashing the box here. And then Marc Cucurella kind of comes up and does winger work with him when we're in possession. And then you got like this kind of 3-person center back role with really 4 attacking players along the outside of the box, with Cucurella doing overlaps here to kind of take up that winger spot. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see that as well. And that's probably what I would prefer. But I wouldn't be surprised if Garnacho started because he didn't play much in the midweek, and I think he has been playing better as of late. And then Joao Pedro, I liked what I saw from him against PSG. Some of you might not. The glancing shot across the front of the box, yes, maybe you'd like him to finish that, of course, but then the confident finish, right, when Pedro Neto was barely offsides. You love to see it. He is just a man with complete confidence in front of the goal. You can't sit him, especially when, in my opinion, there's nobody remotely pushing him behind, which is tough to say because you want Liam Delap to be pushing him, but I don't think he is right now. So that's my 11. Rob Sanchez in the back with Reece James, Sarr, Chalobah, and Cucurella in the back 4. Andre Santos, Caicedo, Palmer in his 10, Pedro Neto on the right, Enzo kind of in the left, also kind of pocket space, and then Joao Pedro up top. So that's my squad to beat Newcastle. And speaking of beating Newcastle, I'm going to predict a 2-1 victory. I don't really trust us for clean sheets right now, but I do trust us for scoring goals. So I think we're going to win this game 2-1, and I'm going to go for a Cole Palmer goal because I think he's starting to look a little bit more confident again. He got that really good contact shot on net in the PSG match. I'm going to go for a Cole Palmer goal, and I'm going to go for a Joao Pedro goal. I know, really risky going for a Cole and a Joao goal, but statistically that's what's most likely for Chelsea Football Club. So leave me your guys' score predictions below. Do you think we're going to get back in the win column this Saturday against Newcastle when, they have the likes still of Anthony Gordon, Elanga, Voltamata, these different players that are skillful even though they're inconsistent? Or will we finally get back on the horse with a good full 90-minute performance? I hope so. You guys probably hope so too, but nonetheless, we'll be here either way. I'll talk to you guys next week.